Okay, checking YouTube audio. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, hey. Check 1, 2.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Common Council meeting for the City of Delafield on Monday, April 21st, 2025 at 7 p.m. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call, please.
Sure thing. Alderperson Henry.
Here.
Alderperson Schaefer.
Here.
Alderperson Valdey.
Here.
Alderperson Wilkin.
Here.
Alderperson Laughlin. Alderperson Grimmer and Alderperson Price are excused this evening. Mayor Eicher.
Present.
Administrator Hafner. Here. And then we also have City Attorney Joe Worth in the audience here tonight.
All right, thank you, Molly. Item number 4, Citizen of Delafield, citizens' comments. Anybody here from the city of Delafield wishing to make comments tonight? Or anybody else? Yes.
I would, if it would be acceptable, just like to address the council just briefly regarding the.
These are public comments, so.
And that's why I understood that, but I wanted.
Perfect. Yeah, please come up and introduce yourself, name and address, and make sure the microphone's on. You need to press the bottom bar.
Sorry.
Perfect.
How's
Thank you.
that?
Awesome.
All right. Good evening. I'm Edie Peterson. I am an attorney. My address is 155 East Capitol Drive. My law firm is Langer and Peterson, LLC. And the reason I requested to address the council just briefly, I promise, this evening, is because the appeal for the Metropolitan Builders Association is on the agenda today for consideration by the council. And I just wanted to briefly refresh the council of the MBA's position.
And just so you know, I'm not asking for tons of time for
Sure.
you to spend, but this has obviously not been a hurried process. So if you need more than 2 minutes and you need 10,
Okay.
take 10.
Maybe 5 to 10.
Okay.
How about that? I do promise it'll be
No, good.
much briefer than in January. So the reason I wanted to address you is because I want to make sure that the council really takes a hard look this evening during your discussion and deliberation regarding the appeal at the Wisconsin statute that pertains to impact fees. That's section 66.0617. It's a statute that the city is required to comply with if it's going to assess impact fees against developers. As I mentioned or I attempted to make clear at the January meeting, the Metropolitan Builders Association believes that Delafield does not manage its impact fees in a manner that complies with the statute, and thus the appeal that's been filed. There's a number of ways in which we believe that the city has not complied. One is not holding the impact fees in a separate segregated interest-bearing account. Another is not providing developers at the time of payment of the fees with a accounting of how the fees will be spent. But more importantly, the statute requires a municipality to conduct a needs assessment prior to revising the amount of impact fees, or when a city alters the public facilities for which impact fees are going to be assessed. The needs assessment, as we discussed in January, needs to identify the public infrastructure, either changes to it, improvements to it, expansions of it, that is necessitated by development in order to determine what appropriate facilities are used, are funded in part with impact fees, and also to determine an appropriate impact fee that's reasonably related to development. So the problem that we see is that the city has only commissioned one needs assessment, ever, and that was in 2000. That needs assessment addressed the then existing library, fire, police, recreational, and recycling facilities that existed at that time. The needs assessment from 2000 identified no improvements or expansions that were needed to address development or any plans for any expansion or improvement. That needs assessment has never been amended. It's never been revised. It's never been redone. Not even when the city undertook the municipal building project in 2008-2010, which was approved by referendum when the residents of Delafield determined to allow the city to incur debt in order to create the municipal project, which was the subject of the referendum. The referendum allowed the city to use tax dollars to pay the debt associated with the project. I know there is a Plan B report that's in the documents that you are going to be considered, but I want to make clear to you that that is not a needs assessment. It does not replace a needs assessment. The Plan B report, while I think it was very thoughtful and complete, does not address the issue of evaluating what part, if any, of the municipal project being proposed was necessitated by development and what part of those costs development should bear. The statute requires that impact fees only be spent on facilities identified in a needs assessment. The needs assessment that Delafield has is for the structures and the facilities that existed in 2000 for fire, library, police, recreation, and recycling. And according to the city's own documents, I believe those documents show that the city has allocated impact fees, not to those facilities, but rather to the undesignated surplus of the debt service fund in order to offset future debt levies. Now, that's what the city's documents state. And to be honest, whether the impact fees collected during this period were spent directly on the municipal buildings associated with the project or were allocated to pay debt for the municipal project, as Mr. Hafner has claimed, that is still contrary to statute, because the municipal buildings that exist now associated with that project were never evaluated and were never the subject of a needs assessment. So no evaluation was ever undertaken by the city of Delafield to determine what portion, if any, of those new buildings was necessitated because of development in the city of Delafield. The statute requires a refund of fees that are not used in accordance with the statute. It is Metropolitan Builders Association that all the fees allocated towards the municipal project, either the debt or paid dollar for dollar, were not in accordance with the statute and therefore need to be refunded. Who do the refunds need to go to? According to statute, which has changed over the years, the refund should go, if the refund was due prior to 2018, the refund should go to the then current homeowner. Currently, from 2018 up to the present, those refunds, the refunds that were due during that period, should go to the payor of the fees. And that's a very brief, I tried hard to be very brief with my summary of the argument of the Metropolitan Builders Association, but I just want to state that this really is an important issue for many communities, including the city of Delafield. Costs like impact fees and other costs that developers have to bear and pass on to their customers as a result of the municipality's assessment of fees or requirements of building roads has become a real issue when it comes to housing affordability. And having people in our communities be able to afford a home, either purchasing one or building one. So I appreciate your time, and I'm asking you to really carefully consider your decision today, because it is important to take a hard look at the information that you've been given and how it how the statute applies to that information. I think you'll find that the Metropolitan Builders Association's appeal, while broad and encompassing, is reasonable given the facts of what's occurred in Delafield. If you do have any questions this evening, I will be here, and I can hopefully answer any questions that you might have of me.
Thank you
For your time.
thank you for your comments. If you have anything you'd like to add in anticipation of possible questions, right now, that'd be fine. Our citizens' comments portion do not allow for this interaction.
Okay.
Unlike your presentation in January, where we were open for that, and I think we
Okay.
asked some questions. But if, at the point of the hearing where we're deliberating this, later in the agenda, if we feel it necessary, we'll call you up.
That sounds perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the audience tonight? Anything on or off the agenda? Okay, hearing none, citizens' comments are now closed. Now we have item 5, a special order of business, which is unfortunate but definitely needed. This is in honoring of Police Commissioner Bradley Stocks for his service to the city of Delafield for the past several decades, right, Chief?
40 years.
All right.
So,
I think sitting down might, even though this is
Yeah.
appropriate to stand up, sitting down might be the best way to capture it on video, because I know Brad can't be here.
yeah. So,
Nice.
there we go. Yes, so, I'm Chief Nyron. Most of us have met, some just this evening. But today I'm here to honor probably one of the longest serving committee members that this city has seen in quite a long time.
Ever? I'm
Possibly
going to
ever.
venture to say ever, but
Yeah. Police Commissioner Bradley Stocks. So I'm just going to read the letter and then I'll talk a little bit about Commissioner Stocks. But on behalf of the City of Delafield Police Department and the citizens of the City of Delafield, this letter of appreciation is presented to Police Commissioner Bradley Stocks. We would like to honor Commissioner Stocks for his dedication to this community over the last 40 years. Stocks has served the City of Delafield since joining the Police and Fire Commission in May of 1984, and has contributed to the progress of the department through promotional processes, the hiring of new police officers, and the discussion of department priorities. Commissioner Stocks has been involved in the hiring and promotion of every current member of the Delafield Police Department. Commissioner Stocks served as Commission Chair, working closely with myself to solve the complex hiring challenges facing law enforcement in the modern era. We wish Commissioner Stocks the very best and are truly grateful for his many years of service to the City of Delafield. We truly would not be the department we are today without him. Unfortunately, Commissioner Stocks is not able to join us today, but we do have a crystal gift for him that commemorates his service to the city. He'll also be receiving a Department Challenge coin, a copy of the letter, and I'll be working with Fire Chief Fenning to deliver a plaque that they have for him as well, because like I originally said, he joined the Police and Fire Commission back in 1984, so he's been supportive and a part of this community for 4 decades. I just want to thank him for his unwavering support of our department. He has seen us through, as most of you know, some difficult hiring times in law enforcement and in the fire service. He has, over 40 years, never fallen into the trap of that's how we always do it. He's been supportive of our changes in our approach to hiring, supportive in the restructure of the department to better serve the community. When I first took over as chief, he met with me at least once a month to just see how things were going early on and help guide me through the process. So it is, with great honor that I can present this to him and just give our just heartfelt thanks because, like I said, we would not be the department we are today without him. So, thank you.
thanks, Chief. That's great. We appreciate Brad's steady hand at the wheel, and I didn't get to interact with him often and long, but he's clearly well-respected community and Wisconsin-wide, so we appreciate his service. All right. Thanks, Chief. All right. Item 5B, and sorry you have to go after that, Steve.
That's all right. I'll keep it
But
brief.
just a brief introduction of our newest alderperson, Stephen Laughlin.
Yes, I'll keep it brief, I promise. I'm Steve Laughlin, and I have been living in Delafield for about 10 years now, all of it in District 7, which is what I represent as an alderman now. And I decided to put myself into this situation because so many of my friends told me that they thought I would be good at this. I've never been in public office before, so this is a new adventure for me. I've been in the private sector as a private equity person, running corporations, building businesses, and doing all kinds of crazy stuff for my entire adult life. And I thought that skill set might be valuable to the city and to the constituents of the city, so I decided to take a shot at it and hope that it turns out well. I'm just getting started. I think it's my 4th or 5th day. Is that about right? So
That's about right.
I don't know very much yet, but I'm working on it, and I'm glad to be here. So I told you I'd be brief, so I'm done.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Welcome. All right. And with that, item 6, announcement for matters for possible closed session. Looking for a motion to convene a closed session pursuant to the following provisions. Should I read it for them? Okay. Motion to convene in closed session pursuant to the provisions of Wisconsin State Statutes 1985 1G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or likely to become involved. More specifically, conferring with legal counsel regarding the impact fee appeal filed by the Metropolitan Builders Association of Greater Milwaukee. So I'm looking for a motion for closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please, Molly?
Alderperson Henry.
Aye.
Alderperson Schaefer.
Aye.
Alderperson Valdy.
Aye.
Alderperson Wilkin.
Aye.
Alderperson Laughlin.
Laughlin is good.
Laughlin.
I'll respond to both, though. Aye.
All right, with that, motion passes. So as of this moment, we're in closed session, so please be patient as we conclude our business internally. Please turn off your mic.
Sound like you're a rookie.
All right, I'm looking for a motion to come back into open session.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please, Melanie?
Alderperson Henry.
Aye.
Alderperson Schaefer.
Aye.
Alderperson Valdy.
Aye.
Alderperson Wilkin.
Aye.
Alderperson Laughlin.
Aye.
Okay, we are now back in open session at 8:21, and it pains me, but I'm going to ask for a 5-minute recess for a quick break.
Stretch your legs.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Appreciate your patience. Calling the meeting back to order at 8:27. So now on to item 6C, discussion and possible action regarding the Metropolitan Builders Association of Greater Milwaukee appeal to the city of Delafield regarding use of impact fees pursuant to municipal code section 46.4D. So with that, I'll defer to our attorney to just give us a little bit of an introduction and go through some of the points.
Okay, fine. I think what is before you this evening is the MBA's appeal, and it's my suggestion, in fact, it's my recommendation, that you address it as such, and that you, to the extent you're going to take action tonight, you discuss each of the elements, but you only take action on exactly what is sought in the appeal and the remedies that the appeal is asking for. I think if you extend your consideration or extend your decision-making beyond exactly what's in the appeal, we run into public notice problems, and we run into situations where we may be operating outside our jurisdiction and deciding matters not properly before this body. So the appeal in this case is seeks what I'll refer to as 5 remedies divided into 2 categories. The appeal seeks what it refers to as accountability for the city, and within that designation has several subcategories. And then secondarily, it seeks refund of improperly held or collected impact fees. So what you're going to be deciding this evening with respect to the remedy demanded of accountability for the city is a detailed accounting of impact fee collection and expenditure information for 2000 to 2015. B, a detailed accounting of impact fees collected for 2016 to 2016 to 2023. C, an annual reporting requirement concerning impact fees collected, a description of how used, and the payors of those impact fees. And then the second category in the appeal is a demand for a refund of all impact fees for, well, it actually says a demand for all impact fees for 2007 to 2015, that it be sent to the payor of the fee along with accumulated interest. And then, in addition, any funds collected by the city but not expended within the last 8 years, that would be 2016 through 2023, be refunded to the payor of the fee with interest. So those are the 5 things you'll be voting on this evening. To the extent that you decide to take action at all on those 5, I'll walk through them again when you have the chance. But what I would suggest is that tonight's discussion on those 5 demands within the appeal kind of follow what's being asked. I'll help with anything that I think needs to be addressed that hasn't been addressed, but otherwise your discussion should be on the record, and then that should eventually lead you to whether you're going to decide to take action. So the first relief demanded is an accounting of all impact fees and paid to the city from 2000 to 2015, to include each payor, amount paid by each, itemization of how spent, and this is largely a procedural request. So essentially, the first demand that you're going to consider is whether or not to authorize, if it has not already been done, a detailed accounting of impact fees collected and spent from 2000 to 2015. That should be the initial discussion that you have with respect to what that entails, whether it's feasible, whether it's already been done, those kinds of things.
So I guess I think it'd be appropriate, I know, Tom, you have a detailed letter that was out in January 15th. It's my impression that some, most, or all of that was addressed in that, or is that, you give an accounting of, a statement at least of what was already provided? Is that provided, do you think, or no?
Yeah, as far as what is correct, provided, each and every impact fee collected from 2000 until the end of the report is identified by who paid it, how much was paid. And then as far as expenditure of the impact fees, it identifies how much impact fees were used on the municipal buildings each year, by year.
When it's listing the payors, or is it listing the builders, or is it listing the homeowners?
I would have to take a look through the spreadsheet, but I would imagine it'd be a combination of the two.
Okay, sorry, I'm just.
And I think part of what your analysis should be is, given the fact that what's on appeal is kind of the method of collection, the use of the fees, whether or not that information has been provided to them, whether additional detail ought to be considered, and whether or not that's what I would call an individualized remedy to the MBA, or something that would benefit the city as a whole.
Danielle, just looking through the spreadsheet, it looks to be mostly builders that paid the impact fees, but there's some individual names, there's some corporations that paid the fees, so it's a combination.
Okay, thank you.
And so would there be an accounting in there of how or if and what method the builders then pass those fees along?
There would not be.
And then, so specific to each individual item then, would there, I mean, going back, now we're being asked to go back, what is this? 18 years?
Actually, all the way back to 2000.
Okay, all right, so individual to each submitted payment, outside of the annual expenditure of the fees that were then spent toward the building projects or city debt, we wouldn't have a specific, like this bought tires for a squad car, or, I mean, not that, but I mean, what brick and what building. I mean, this is accumulation of funds that would be on an annual basis.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Correct, no more specific than that.
Okay.
I think that's, given the time frame of this, I think it is well past what would be an appropriate amount of time to be requesting these refunds in the first place. I think we're talking, I mean, 10 to 25 years. So I think that we have provided the information that they've requested, even though I don't even know that it's appropriate that we would even have needed to. So I mean, in my opinion, I think we've satisfied that request with the documents that we've already given them.
Is there any other questions, comments, or a motion on that particular element? Of what?
Just to be clear, what specific, we're talking specifically about the detailed accounting
We're
for
talking-
2000 to 2015? Or are we talking on a broader scale here?
No, we're just talking about the 2000 to 2015.
Okay.
So I guess my question is, if we believe we've already satisfied this requirement, would we then be, I mean, if we believe we've already satisfied this requirement or this request of theirs, would we be approving it, or I mean, we want to be?
In that instance, if you believe that the accounting that has been provided essentially during this process and that Tom Hefner has provided to them as this comes before the board, that accounting, that report would be part of the council record in this case. So if that's the report you think satisfies it, and the idea amongst you is that that's all that is necessary, then you can probably bring a motion to deny the appeal that's still owed.
Okay.
Basically, it would be a motion along the lines of motion to deny the remedy sought in the appeal for a detailed accounting of impact fee collection and expenditure information for years 2000 to 2015,
Okay.
and then vote on it.
So I will make a motion to deny their appeal for a detailed accounting and reporting for 2000 through 2015, based on that we've already provided that information to them.
Second.
Is there any further discussion or questions?
I'd just like to say that asking for something from 10 to 25 years ago seems like it can't be a very urgent need if it's taken this long to get to us.
Well, I mean, more granular than it's already been provided? Is that what?
Yeah, I think, I agree. I think at this point, because of the time lapse, I think that the more broad, I mean, it might be a more broad that we've provided to them, but given the time frame of that is, I think it's a completely appropriate what we've provided to them
Is
for
there
the
any other
timeframe.
questions or comments?
Yeah, my comment would be to sort of echo what Danielle said. The time frame of going back that far, I guess I'd have to defer to personnel and our staff whether we even have records available that far, because it's way past the period most people retain their records for. I don't know what we really have for that, but just on virtue of that, I think it would be something I would not be comfortable saying yes to that request for this time frame.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, or abstentions? Okay, that motion passes.
Joe, should we have a roll call on this, or is a voice vote good?
I think a voice vote is okay on this. I mean, it's an appellate vote, but it's not doesn't fall into the category of individualized roll call vote, so.
And it was fairly clear to me.
Yeah,
All right.
there were no nays. Okay, then the next one that you would take up is that, essentially that same detailed accounting of impact fee collection and expenditure information provided for the years 2016 to the time of the appeal, which would be 2023. You could probably even consider that through 2025, given the fact that through no fault of the appellants, we're still considering their 2023 appeal. So the second element that you would consider is the remedy demanded of providing a detailed accounting of fees collected and expended for the years 2016 to the present. And again, a similar discussion should probably be involved, or should probably involve the requirements, the demand that would put upon the city, and whether it's already been complied with, and whether you think it's a good idea, and vote in favor of doing it.
I'll speak on this for a second, if I may. I don't know procedurally if I can suggest this now, or if we'd have to postpone it for a further discussion on public records, so it would be proper notice. But on this time frame, I think the request is probably reasonable. I know we've already given them a certain amount of information, although I could see benefit to going a little bit deeper on the expenditure analysis to make it a little easier to see that we know we used that money properly. I think this report does tell you that, but there are some questions that you could ask that could be answered more detailed. And so I would encourage that that might be reasonable to request, but it's a pretty onerous task. Somebody's got to put a lot of time into that. So I'm resistant for the reason because it's so onerous. But I can see why, to some degree, there may be other questions that people who aren't familiar with the integrity of things that happen around here may not be able to see clearly.
I think it may just be a slight upgrade. Maybe the information is fairly readily available. It may just not be in the format or the detail of the report that's already been provided. So it may not be that cumbersome on the city staff to provide exactly what the MBA is looking for.
Tom, has there been feedback as far as what's been provided, as far as if there's something lacking, or is this just an outstanding request that may or may not have been answered based on what kind of feedback we've gotten?
We have not received any feedback as far as the adequacy of the information we've provided.
And you should keep in mind, too, that during the course of this appellate consideration, this report was generated and shared with the appellants, and they still have the opportunity under Wisconsin open records law to make a request if additional detail is required. So this is more specific to the appeal and whether or not there needs to be provided a detailed accounting of fees collected and expended for years 2016 to the present. If you amongst yourselves in your discussion decide that that has been complied with, that has been met, and find out later that they think additional information is necessary, they can always pursue that through an open records request. So the vote you have to decide on, or the vote you have to kind of create this evening, is whether to grant the appeal and determine that you will provide, I guess your discussion is a more detailed accounting, or whether the motion will be to deny the appeal for the similar reason that it's already been predominantly complied with, and then they can pursue.
Yeah, so I think if I'm understanding right, Joe, my reaction to this would be the same as it was for the first time frame. That I think we've already provided substantial information, but if we deny the request because we've already provided it and they have additional questions that they feel we didn't answer, they can always ask that again through an open records request, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yep, they are not precluded from opening.
So we're not saying we won't talk to you anymore. We're just saying you haven't asked us the questions. We don't know what we really need to answer for you.
Right. I mean, you have to keep in mind that the open records laws have restrictions, and you can't force a municipality to start creating reports that don't already exist and create information that doesn't already exist. But if it's something that can be complied with within the parameters of the open records law, then yeah, they remain citizens that can make those requests.
Yeah.
I will say, and this will probably be more relevant later, but I just want to say I wholeheartly believe that the city used the funds appropriately, and that was reflected in the reports that were already given. I think there could be, it could be argued that maybe there could be a little bit more details provided as far as exactly how it's allocated, but if the project costs $100,000 and we collected $70,000 in fees, it can be assumed that those funds were used for that project. So I think that the reports that were given demonstrate that, and anything more than that would just be maybe if there's more details needed, I think that should be. I didn't realize that there was not any feedback on the information that we had already given. So That being said, I mean, we've provided the information to them, and if there's additional information that they're needing, I think that that can be requested. So I'll go ahead and make a motion to deny their request for the detailed accounting and reporting for 2016 to 23, but essentially 25. Based on that, it's already been given. So if there's additional information that they are needing or more specifics, then that should be requested of the city in an open records, as anyone else could do.
I'll second.
Is there any other questions or comments on the motion? None? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Or abstentions? Okay, motion carries.
Third remedy being sought is what's described as moving forward. MBA is demanding that it be provided with an annual detailed reporting of the impact fees collected by the city and a separate reporting of how impact fees are spent during the year. All disclosures should include a statement of who paid the impact fees. So this demand for remedy on appeal is essentially an obligation on the city to report to the MBA on an annual basis with a kind of a future-looking, forward-looking, detailed reporting of the impact fees collected by the city, along with a report on how it's being spent and who's paying those impact fees.
So quick question, is there, I'm assuming we don't have to draft an ordinance to update tonight to put that procedure in place? I mean, is there anything that would preclude us from having that as a motion to say that the city will take future action to enact an ordinance and even collaborate with the MBA to get their input on the types of information that should be made available to the general public upon their request?
No, and I would put, I think that's a good idea. I have a problem, or legally, I see an issue with making a private contract with an appellant on how the city will conduct itself in the future, binding future common council to a private contract has legal implications that concern me. There are a couple of bases in this appeal that I think fall into that category. There is a basis in the appeal for an assertion of improper conduct that includes not having a separate bank account, segregated bank account, interest-bearing. There's a concern that there should be an obligation to the MBA, as opposed to the public, to do forward-looking reporting, forward-looking accounting. And then there's a basis in this appeal for things like, it's escaping me now, but there was a third one that is kind of almost a procedural thing. Oh, that the language in the statute with respect to the years, language in the ordinance doesn't track with the statute. I don't see any reason the city can't accomplish addressing all three of those kinds of things with a new ordinance. But I don't think that the city, in response to the appeal presently considered tonight, needs to bind itself with respect to ordinance. But that's absolutely a solution that can be contemplated.
Understood, because I mean, I'm just thinking out loud that the understanding the request and the reason for the request, it could certainly be accommodated with an updated ordinance, but I wouldn't just want to bind us to a particular constituency, and it should be open to the public, the general concerns of the public as it applies to any ordinance, and I mean, that would follow its own process, so I guess so maybe it's more prudent to deny that request here and just do that as our own, as an own action item moving forward. It's just whatever, regardless.
Right.
Taking it as a suggestion for a corrective action that we'll do on our own.
Right,
Right.
and if the council decision, or if the council discussion tonight anticipates things like an ordinance that's updated to comply with terms that match the statute, that could also be the vehicle through which, you know, a separate segregated interest-bearing account gets created, and a forward-looking accounting of the kind being demanded by the MBA be made available to the public through the ordinance itself. So if that's the discussion that the council wants to have and the council approves, then that could be the basis of the motion.
We don't need a motion for this, but I would make a request that we add this to a future agenda to revisit the ordinance on accounting of impact fees.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes apparent in the detail of this. I don't think we've done this deep of a dive into this particular ordinance in the last several years, and that the fact that our ordinance talks about separate detailed accounting of funds as opposed to separate bank interest-bearing accounts seems to be a deficiency we can definitely address in an updated ordinance, along with anything else we might be able to find to improve it, even with the reporting capabilities. Is that?
Yeah, I would mirror the discussion you're talking about right now, because I think it's very timely for us to get the statute out and have Joe help us make sure we're up to date, and we've thought about the things that this conversation we've been having with the Builders Association has made us take a look at, and perhaps just maybe clean it up a little bit so it's prettier. So we have more things at our fingertips, and people don't have to ask for us in this work we didn't already do. But I don't think we can decide any of that at this meeting because we haven't noticed it. It has to be done in the future. But so with respect to this request, I think that it would be inappropriate in every way to bind ourselves to give a private party special handling. I think that everything that we do has to be available to the public to whatever extent it's available, not just to a private party that we're bound to by private contract, as you were describing, Joe. So I would be uncomfortable with approving this request in the way it's offered here, but I would not be opposed to just upgrading the record keeping a little bit to make sure we have this in our pocket.
And that's a good point. I mean, tonight you're only voting on the demand for appellate remedy that the MBA be provided with an annual detailed report of the impact fees collected. And so you're going to either float a motion to grant that appellate remedy or to deny that appellate remedy as it's demanded in tonight's proceedings.
Yeah, well, then I'll unless there's further discussion, anybody have further discussion?
Make a motion, there'll be discussion after.
Okay, I'll make the motion then that we decline to approve the annual report requirement as requested.
I'll second.
Is there discussion?
Yeah, I think it's just important to note that it's based on that we do not want to be binding to a private or to a single organization or anything. If we're going to do this, it's going to be open to the public. They can make that request every year if they want an annual report every year. And we're going to revisit hopefully we're going to, I assume this is going to go on to a future agenda item to update our ordinance. And then we'll see what that report looks like if we have a specific report for the impact fees versus if that's just going to be in our annual budgeting, which I believe it kind of is already, just maybe not as detailed as would be appropriate. So my reasoning for voting this down would be because I don't think it's appropriate for us to be binding to a specific entity.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I'd just like to say two things. First of all, the state statute, as I read it, over the last 25 years, has been kind of a moving target, and so it's good for us to update our city's ordinance to be in compliance with the higher level legislation. But I also agree with everybody else that we don't really want to be beholden to an organization and have an obligation to deliver reports privately.
Have you ever been part of the recodification process at the city level? As soon as it's done, it starts over. So I
Yeah.
appreciate
Absolutely.
appreciate your. Any other questions or comments? right, all those in favor, say aye.
Wait, can you repeat what the motion is?
This is to deny the request for a
Motion to
specific
deny.
report to the MBA on the annual accounting moving forward, and then there's sentiment, obviously, to update our ordinance to make it more globally available. Say, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Okay, motion passes.
And then I think probably the one that requires the most discussion is the first appellate demand for remedy for a refund of all impact fees from 2007 to 2015, that refund be to the payor of the fee along with accumulated interest. The rationale within the appeal is that the impact fees were improperly accounted for, improperly allowed to flow into debt service, and then therefore not properly spent within the 8 years, 2007 to 2015. So that one probably requires your analysis and your discussion, and then the formation of a vote, formation of a motion.
Well, this one's an interesting one. There's a number of moving pieces here, so I guess from my perspective, the first and foremost thing is that from the information that's been provided by our staff, I'm wholly satisfied that our staff has properly managed these funds throughout the entirety of this process, including the prediction of what we needed to try and approximate the expansion needs to accommodate all of this development. I'm also confident that all these developers know that their projects and their subdivisions wouldn't have been worth very much had we not expanded that infrastructure. So I'm sure that all of them, if we had them here, would probably reiterate that fact. I also think that it would be wholly inappropriate then to refund any of these funds because I think they're all properly expended for the purposes for which they were intended. And it perhaps is a little confusing when you talk about whether debt service is using the funds, but the debt that we're funding is the debt that was borrowed to fund the actual project. That's what makes it appropriate to use the debt service funds. And it's possible, as we talked about before, we could improve a little bit more detail to show that a little more clearly. If someone wanted to ask those questions in a new open records request, we can go a little deeper maybe. But I'm absolutely satisfied that we don't have a deficiency here in the use of our funds. I also think that even if we did grant this refund, the homeowners are going to get clobbered with it anyway because we'll have to have a tax increase to offset it. They're going to get hit with something bigger if it goes to litigation because it'll cover anything that we have out of our pocket on top of it. So it's not in the best interest of our taxpayers for us to approve this refund in any context I can think of because, first of all, it's not appropriate. Second of all, it's going to be worse for them if we do because we have to tax them instead. That's my position. So I would be opposed to this in every way.
Well, just to back up a second, in specific to this timeline regarding this inquiry and this appeal, it mirrors my move to this area, and I've been a southeastern Wisconsin resident my whole life. I've loved this area. This is where I wanted to live, and I realized that dream in 1999. But a lot of what I've read in what was presented with back in January or February when this presentation was made and the information and the excerpts from minutes and how they were used from the council meetings, some of which I was a part of, going back to 2009, and just some of the history of the city going back to 2000. It was very clear. It's even clear today about the culture of this community. We're extremely frugal. You might deny it, but our median base income is right at the median for Waukesha County. We're not this affluent community. We've got our ups and our downs with people. We're a good cross section of people, but development was highly resisted back in the 90s in this community. So much so that some people were vilified that are now praised today, like Mr. Lang with some of the developments that he made, and the state ordinance that allowed development fees to allow new development to be, the costs associated with providing increased levels of services necessary for new development, for some of those costs to be shared on the developers as opposed to be fully borne by the longtime residents, broke down a barrier for development, and that's what caused a lot of the growth that happened in the 2000, 2005-ish range. And it wasn't just, you know, that spurred, it wasn't just the fact that, well, whatever, the 2000, if you read the analysis that was done in 1999 and 2000 that was part of that needs analysis, it clearly demonstrated that the service level that the city was providing was adequate for the existing for the existing residents. It didn't say that it was going to accommodate the hundreds of new houses, dozens of new businesses, the ongoing expansion and new malls with the big box stores we have on 83 and 94, what that meant for fire protection, what that meant for increased demands for our library services and police protection. But the debate about, you know, just putting those fees in place, you know, led the city to say, okay, we will be able to at some point afford this new growth and provide the service level that's necessary. And it was an ongoing referendum after referendum to decide how to right-size new development, the infrastructure, not just the building we're in here for the council chambers, but the library and the public services, which was really in need. And so that was put in motion, and the city right-sized it. I mean, we fine-tuned it, and perhaps we might have conflated our Plan B full build-out needs analysis for the city with the actual formal needs analysis for the developers, you know, fees that were part of what we were doing as a city. But it enabled the growth we have, and this wasn't a nice to have, this was a need. And so putting those things in place to accommodate future growth and pay for it as that growth came later in the form of paying down the loans, seems like a very prudent way to accommodate growth, as opposed to setting up a bank account, waiting until you're busting at the seams and your police department's too small, your fire department's too small, your library was an attic in this building. It enabled the type of growth we have. And so I just kicking this off by saying, cherry picking some quotes and some council discussions, as opposed to following the ongoing letters to the editor and the Lake Country Reporter and the Waukesha Freeman from 1998 to 2020, is a very, very out of context way to interpret how the city is very frugal with their money and use these funds appropriately. And I trust that a microscope analysis of how we've applied them will show that maybe we undershot it and we should have had bigger buildings, but we didn't spend them wrong. So I don't know if that all makes sense, but I just lived through it, and I was part of some of these meetings that were called out in the last presentation. And the fact that there was some older people in some of the meetings that had some conjecture about, couldn't we use this for that then? That wasn't a statement of fact. That was a question to staff that was answered. And the answer sometimes was yes and sometimes was no. And sometimes it was legal opinion that we didn't follow because we didn't want to, you know, spend more or spend less. But this was not a slush fund. This was a way to pay for buildings that we knew we needed if we were to sustain some growth. We did the prudent thing, and we built it, and they came. And now they're paying for it, and I think that's fair. So anyway, that's my preamble to however we're going to have more discussion on this, but ask Tom questions or talk amongst yourself, please, and come up with a motion.
I'll say one thing that stood out to me tremendously during the presentation was the reference that the services needed to stay the same and that we couldn't use the impact fees to increase our services except as we're growing both with businesses and not just the people who are living here, but the people who are coming here, you need increased services to be able to provide the same level of service. So to say that we couldn't grow our services, I think is absurd to me. And I think that the growth to our services has been appropriate and proportional to the growth of our city.
Yeah, it's specifically the infrastructure needed to accommodate, like a fire department. I mean, just, you know, take a look at where we were stretched at the seams. So this wasn't a fund used to hire people. This was a fund used to build the infrastructure to accommodate those people that were going to be needed. And, you know, I think it's reasonable that I wish we could go back and take a tour of the old library. Wish we could go back and show how we,
It was so bloody awful.
I wish we could go back and show.
Shockingly
yeah,
awful,
so
yeah.
We were so anyways.
And our library is now, I mean, it's a destination. We service people from all over the county, all from multiple counties. It is not just our citizens that are being serviced by this library. It's
also something, right? It was specifically right-sized for the build-out of this community to the 11,000 future, you know, and so this wasn't saying come to Delafield from Fort Atkinson. It was, we're going to need this for our community, you know, and anyways, but there's some detailed notes in there from that size. And so, yeah, shame on us for not having that specific, those analysis that were done for the Plan B committee. We're just, you know, when we've got a city staff of 7 people, and it's all volunteer driven, all these committees and that, we can't have 5 committees, one to accommodate every state ordinance, but I think we did a very solid job in coming up with the right sizing of our public facilities that we're now being paid for underneath what's appropriately shared by new growth. But, okay, to the question of fees from 2007, 2015, is that where we're at?
Tom, can you talk a minute about the percent of the contribution of the development and the impact fees versus the amount of growth that we had? I think somewhere in some of your information, there was something about that.
Yeah, well, the part of development that we were able to readily quantify is population growth. That has to do with residential. So this, I think what you're talking about, this focuses just on residential, so it's highly conservative. But the statistic was that new development has increased the city's population by 13.6% between when the base service level of the city was defined by the initial needs analysis and today. Conversely, the impact fees collected over that same period of time represent only 10.8% of the nearly $12 million for the capital project borrowing for the municipal buildings. And like I said, that just focuses only on the residential, which pales in comparison to the demand that commercial growth places. So it says in here that in addition, the substantial growth of commercial development over that same time, which is not reflected in the population numbers, places an even greater strain on municipal facilities than residential development does.
Thank you.
I think it's also worth addressing some of the arguments that were made on behalf of the MBA, both this evening and prior, and the board should probably discuss this concept that it was essentially an unassigned surplus fund that was used for projects unanticipated in 2000 as almost a rainy day fund. And it's probably worth this council discussing whether there was in fact a linear relationship between the impact fees and the elements within the 2000 study.
I think we have to look at that and say, in 2000, we had the needs assessment. And once we got the needs assessment, we moved forward with that, and we tried to figure out how we could implement that.
Well, I think it's sort of fundamentally as a baseline for saying that the types of facilities we had at the time were barely, they were sufficient for the population and the scope of the city that existed at that time. And so incrementally expanding the amount of roads the police had to monitor, the number of people visiting the library, the number of people that needed fire protection, the properties that needed fire protection, the way that commercial growth would impact the daytime population and people that also needed policing and other things. It stood as a baseline to say that this is what a per capita and per household contribution requires for, this amount of money, it requires this amount of, accommodates this kind of facility. Incremental growth beyond that requires incremental expenditures to accommodate more space, to accommodate more people. And that's the formula that appears to have been, and I was part of it starting in 2009, appears to have been updated on an annual basis, and it is, and it has been. It's something that's analyzed each year. It's like, here's the facility space, here's the accommodations that are required for the population and the properties that exist. So it wasn't saying very specifically in 2000, I don't think, that we need a 11,000 square foot library or whatever. I'm overstating it, I bet. But it's saying that our existing library barely satisfies today's needs. If we go beyond this, we need more space. And that's what we put in place, and that's what was argued about and implemented then over the next few years as we knew we were gonna incur growth. And so we accumulated money as those plans were put in place, and that money went to pay for it, and it still does. I mean, that's how I interpret the 2000 needs study. It didn't draw a map for the new buildings. It said, we grow beyond this, we're gonna need to satisfy these people, or it's gonna be a different quality of life. And why would developers come here for something less than what already exists? And so I think that's pretty key. I don't know.
I was just gonna say, I think that the city was still operating under the needs assessment from 2000 in updating it every year and still, I don't think we ever dismissed that. I don't think that was ever, that we weren't gonna use it anymore. That still applies to today and what we were doing today. I think that it would be appropriate for us to look at that with our new ordinance, if that's something how often are we going to update that, or what is gonna be the benchmark of when we update our needs assessment, but I don't think that there was a clear, I don't think it's clear now of when that needs to be updated, and I think that we've always been operating under that same needs assessment with the annual reviews to look at what does that look like for the city, and I think that has still applied. And whether it was appropriate for us to do that or not, I think that we were trying to follow the statute. So it wasn't, we were trying to operate outside of the rules. I think maybe now seeing how that wasn't clear to everybody, that needs to be reviewed, and we need to talk about that when we update our ordinance. But I don't think that dismisses what the intention of the city was in how we were applying those fees.
I wasn't here during that time, as you know, because I'm brand new to the council, but I was in the area, and I was listening to the noise and watching Bob Lane get chased around when he wanted to build things, and how much rhetoric and noise there was, and actually great concern over the inadequacy of the infrastructure if we had all this expansion. So I know that the public sentiment was clearly on board with that, regardless of what we managed to put in print on the needs assessment at the time. Also, we were a much smaller city then than we are now, and a much less sophisticated one in terms of our capabilities in this room. We didn't have the people and the manpower in the office here even. We've grown. And now we have perhaps better reasons to up our game a little bit and do that needs assessment more often. I agree with Danielle. It would be a good thing for us to, at a future time when we set the standard for that. We can't like move on that today or anything because we didn't notice it. But I think in terms of trying to look at what things we learned from this conversation we're having over this topic, I think that's one thing that we should make a point that we're going to pay a little more attention to our looking forward on that kind of stuff.
I'm also going to add that the remedy sought, the remaining two remedies seeking the refund of impact fees for 2007 to 2015, and then 2016, essentially to 2023 when the appeal was filed. And I offer this for your benefit as my legal opinion. The demand is that the fees, to the extent you vote to refund them, be refunded to what's demanded here is the payor of the fee. And I think that's a reference to the language in the current version of the statute. And I think it misinterprets the statute, so I'd give you my legal opinion on that. The statute now requires that fees that are not expended within 8 years that are collected to pay for capital costs for which they were imposed shall be refunded to, quote, the payor of fees, which is what's contained in the demand. But the sentence goes on to say, for the property with respect to which the impact fees were imposed. So it's not, fees are not refunded to the payer of the fees. They're refunded to the payer of the fees for the property with respect to which the impact fees were imposed. And that caused me to go back and take a look at the legislative history on this thing, because that's a really oddly worded sentence. And I will tell you that the legislative history on that statute provides this is the note from the drafter of the update. Current law, that would be the law before the 2017 Assembly bill, current law requires that impact fees be used within certain specified periods depending upon when the ordinance authorizing the impact fees was enacted, when the fee was imposed, or be refunded to the current owner of the property for which the impact fees were imposed. This is the important language. Under this bill, meaning the Assembly Bill 770, impact fees that are not used within the 8 years after they are collected must be refunded to the current owner of the property. So the change in the statutory language back in 2017 didn't change the recipient of the refund. It's still the owner of the property. It made clear that all the other variables about when the time expires have been reduced to a single variable 8 years after the fee was collected. So the drafters of the new ordinance made clear that to the extent you consider a refund tonight, the refund is to the current owner of the property, consistent with the way it was more clearly worded prior to that adoption.
So that's someone other than who actually incurred the original cost, potentially.
It could very well be someone other than who incurred the original cost, yep.
Well, and all that's contingent upon whether fees were properly used or not.
Right.
Okay.
I just want to think for a minute about the timing. You know, we start back at that 2000 needs assessment again, and we didn't put shovels in the ground in 2001. Well, we had some planning and we had some execution work to do. I mean, you have to draw up plans and you have to figure out what the scope is, and you start out with the what conceptual, and then you get into the how and the detail, and that just doesn't happen overnight. And the fact that we didn't put shovels in the ground in 02 or 03 doesn't really mean that we weren't spending that money in engineering work and prep work to move forward with the plan that we had gotten.
Right, but it also, again, I say, I said it before, I think it set the foundation for essentially like a per capita, per property, per square foot, per commercial space amount that new development, what that impact, how to quantify that new impact. And so this wasn't a fund that was arbitrarily set up to just say, hey, let's just put money in the bank. It was saying, this new development that's been resisted for the last decade and fought costs this much, per development, per person, per square foot, was collected, broke down the walls for the new development, and was spent appropriately on these public service accommodations that we have. So while you may say often these impact fees are for like a very specific quantifiable item, this quantified the fact that these services in all these buildings, we didn't just look at police, we didn't just look at fire, we didn't just look at library, we looked at all of it, all that was permissible by the law, saying this is what it costs. And we collected the money in preparation for the fact that development was occurring and those needs were being established, and we were beyond the point that the need was there. It was well established. Just like I said, you don't need a public records request to go look up the Freeman and the Lake Country Reporter and the debates over the referendums and that to actually break ground like you suggested. So again, you know, regardless of the timeline, who the payee, whatever is, I mean, if they were properly spent, nobody's owed anything. And if we were to pay, it's coming out of these people that would be paid back anyways. But still, so I guess the question is, the point of refunding the monies from 2007 to 2015. Is there a motion on thumbs up, thumbs down on this based on what we've been discussing?
I will make a motion to deny the request for a refund of fees from 2007 to 2015 based on that the money was not inappropriately spent or handled.
Second.
Who had the second?
Dirk, is there any more discussion or questions?
Yeah, I'd just like to make another comment that really, we talked a little bit earlier, Mayor, you mentioned how there was so much resistance to development in the late 90s and early 2000s. The impact fees really were that concession to the existing citizenry to allow the development to take place. I mean, otherwise, the additional infrastructure would have been an increase in burden to the folks that were already here.
There's no question that the public outcry about that was very well heard.
It didn't buy them off. It said that particular, the financial aspect of it is no longer a valid argument because they'll be paying their fair freight.
Yeah. Well,
I agree with that, yeah.
But as,
It is now, yeah.
as, you know, the question I asked Tom earlier, you know, the impact fees accounted for about 10% and change. The population increase accounted for 13%, and we haven't even talked about commercial development. So the amount of development and increase that we have seen over this period of time is far more than the amount of impact fees, that the impact fee is paid toward the infrastructure.
Just for residential.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
I'd add one additional comment to address with respect to your vote, to address one of the issues that was raised this evening, and that's with respect to 2C, level of service assumptions in the 2000 study. And I think it merits discussion before you consider your vote on the argument that because the section says that the report assumes that the current level of services provided by the city represents the base level standard, that what you're talking about as you address the population growth and as you address the development, that is for something different than, because it was unknowable at the time, so it's for something different than what was in the needs assessment of 2000. You have to kind of connect the two if you're able to do so.
I think this is similar to what I said before about that our needs assessment was provide this level of service. We have an adequate level of service. We want to maintain that level of service. So as we grow, it means our services are going to have to increase proportionately. So to say that we should have maintained the same services is inappropriate and not reasonable at all. That would not have provided any level of service as we grow. So I think that maybe we didn't always know exactly what that would look like, but we knew what the services we had and what that looked like. So as we were growing and as the different growths are happening, okay, this is what we need to maintain that level of growth. This is what we need in real time. And as we're doing the reviews every year, we're seeing what does that look like. So the city's gone through great pains to maintain the level of services and not, again, very frugally, but I think I mean, is that what you're getting at? That
Yeah, and I think you also need to discuss then whether or not the funds were used for the descriptive kinds of facilities that are contained in there, as opposed to some, I mean, where you build zoos and parks and stuff.
Oh, no, I think I think that's really apparent that we used it for fire, we used it for police, we used it for those infrastructures for the growth that we were having. The amount, I've been in the city, I mean, I've not been on the council, I've been on the council for, do you want to, yeah, no, go ahead, you have some. Oh, I've been on the council for 4 years now, but I've been in the city since '92, so, I mean, well before I was even old enough to know what was going on. But I remember when we moved here, and it was a tiny little town that you could see the stars every night, and now it's a city. And it was a big deal when those changes started to happen, and the growth along 94 was happening. It was a big deal. And I remember the biggest concern that I kept hearing about was, what about the police? What about the increase in crime that's going to be happening? What about that kind of stuff? Because that was never an issue when I was younger. It was like the police were there to give tickets, and we didn't have to worry about certain things like that. So that was a big change that came with the city, and those are the types of things that I think that these impact fees specifically address, the changes that happened within the city with fire and police, and was needed for the type of growth that we were having.
So any other questions or comments? So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Okay, motion carries.
I think you ought to break it down into one final motion, and that is for the same reasons that have been presented to you. The appeal seeks the remedy of a refund of impact fees from 2016 to the present, too. So I think you should probably button that up about whether, as opposed to the old fees, now the new fees, the demand is anything that hasn't been spent within the 8 years or spent properly within the 8 years be refunded to the payor of the fees. So I think it's a different era of the same demand for remedy.
I think it's the same reasons. I think the same thing. We've continued to grow, and we've continued to apply those impact fees appropriately. I will also add, for this particular time frame, I think that the payer of the fees is appropriate to mention that. I think that with regards to whether or not we're approving or denying this request, I think it's a twofold, because I think their request to pay the payer of the fees is not reflective of what the statute is intended. And so I think I'd like to add that on to this part, because I think that's appropriate, that's I believe that's an incorrect interpretation of the statute. So for those two reasons, for the reasons that we've gave for the older ones, and for that it's not I don't believe it's a correct interpretation of the statute.
Well, and I look at some of the basis for argument where they're confusing the fact that this is some sort of a way to pay down the debt burden that was incurred before people moved here. That is not how the city approached those buildings and those infrastructure improvements. Knowing that we aren't going to assess individual homeowners $11 million in 1 year to fully pay all the buildings that are going up, because that need isn't something that showed up from Monday to Tuesday. It's something that we were behind the game in the 2000s, in the, 2009, 2010, when these buildings were built. We built ahead knowing, again, we were anticipating the full build-out of the city to the 10, 11,000 people that the comprehensive plan and plan, the land use plan allows for. You don't just say, well, we're gonna add a room every time there's a new subdivision. We built saying we knew that someday, the golf course was gonna get developed. It was on the land use plan back in the 90s. We knew that someday, and someday in the future, property by Oakwood Church is gonna get developed. We knew Nagawicca Heights was gonna get developed. It's not if, it's when, and you don't incrementally build public facilities necessary to accommodate the new growth. You pay for them, you build them, and you know what? It's pretty common practice to borrow for 10 or 15 or 20 years to pay off something like $11 million when you've only got, 2,500 tax-paying entities. We put this infrastructure in place to accommodate this growth. They're still coming and they're still building. We're still paying off these buildings, and that's how it should go. I mean, you don't pay, the people that were here 10 years ago shouldn't pay for the cost of the growth and the development that's about to happen. You kind of pay as you go, and this loan is how we spread that over time to allow the people that are developing today to pay their fair share of what's been put in place to accommodate their developments. So I mean, that's how I think, whether intentional or not, these dates kind of split that pie in half of where there's a group of people that were here when these buildings were brand new and approved the referendum, and now the people that are moving in after the fact are realizing the fact that this was pretty smart. Hey, this is a good community. They planned for my presence, and here's my essentially minuscule amount of tax on my house to accommodate the fact that these buildings exist to give me the police and the fire and the library that I need. So
Yeah.
that's how I think that there's a decent delineation in this appeal, whether it was intentional or not. I think it separates the fact that these buildings were put in place. These are the people approved for them. Well, now these are also people that are realizing that investment and that debt exists. They're paying for it. And I think that's prudent. I don't think it's against, well, whatever. Tom articulates it a few different ways in his summary letter, and I think he does a good job about it, but anyway.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I totally agree with that analysis you did just now about how you can't build in little incremental tiny steps as the neighborhoods spin out. Because if you did that, the compounded cost of the overall infrastructure expansion would be substantially bigger than it is when you plan ahead and build it in more economical sizes for each step. And because of that, the taxpayers in this community have reasonable taxes, and they wouldn't have if we had done it any other way. So any way you look at this, I think it was very well thought out from that standpoint, that we seem to have right-sized the infrastructure for what we're facing, and then it was value for these people. So I see no reasonable argument that this was not properly used money, or that there was any difficulty in getting comfortable with the way we allocated the funds to these projects. It makes perfect sense in the whole context of the way the city is built.
Is the objection to debt service implying that you have to build fire stations and libraries without borrowing? Municipalities have to operate without borrowing?
I think that's worth talking about. If, in other words, if that is the argument, then, or if it's a different argument, then, that kind of thing. I can't speak for the developer. I'm the panel moderator.
Impact fees would have to be significantly larger to pay for things up front.
Absolutely, they would.
And I think you'd put yourself in a position where the person building today would be building for something that the person building next year wouldn't be paying for, right? I mean, if you didn't spread it out over time and have those payments occur over time, and how to exactly predict what the economy is going to do, what interest rates are going to do, what housing costs are going to be, and what housing demands are going to be. you know, if you build a fire station and a library and a police station that can accommodate 11,000 people, and you think that was going to be realized in the course of 10 years, and it takes 15, which is kind of how it's turned out. If we were all economists that could have predicted that, we wouldn't be sitting here. We'd be retired already, so.
I think it's ironic to me that the MBA is taking the position that their whole motivation for this appeal is for affordability of their clients, when in fact, the practices that the city has taken on in terms of good planning and active use of debt servicing has resulted in the best service and the best facilities to the citizenry. And I think by doing what we've done, we have made our housing more affordable, rather than if we had tried to raise $11 million in 1 year and put an incredible burden on the citizenry at one time.
Well, I think it definitely allocates the cost to the people that are going to be using it, right? And that's kind of where this resistance to development at one point was. And seeing how we put it into practice, we've been able to manage it appropriately. So, any other questions or comments on this, or?
I'll make the motion to deny the request for refunds for the fees from 2016 to 2023.
I'll second that motion.
Who would you put down for that?
I didn't catch either of them.
We'll go with Stephen. All right. Any other discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Do you want to add any basis for that? Clarification of basis in the motion?
I can say, I'll say based on, that the funds were not inappropriately used or mismanaged. And I do want to add too, that I don't believe that the language in their appeal is appropriate or is consistent with the state statute regarding the payor of the fees.
Second.
Any other discussion, clarification?
I would just like to reiterate Danielle's comment about the payer of the fees. I mean, Mark brought in his bill of sale, and it had impact fees listed. So in fact, it's not the developer, it's the homeowner that's the payer of the fees.
Buyer agrees to pay for the fees and permits.
It might have even had a bump up on it.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Okay, motion passes. That concludes item 6C. On to approval of the minutes from our last meeting in March 17th.
I will move to approve the minutes from, just 1 second.
Second.
Sorry, for March 17th.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, Joe, I think if you're just shutting down your laptop, that would probably be prudent, and then you're good to go, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, for your help tonight.
Okay, minutes from March 17th are now passed. 7B, minutes from April 15th organizational meeting.
I move to approve the minutes for April 15th.
I'll second with a comment that not only was it the fastest meeting ever, but it was the fastest submission of minutes ever.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Okay, minutes passed. Consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Okay, consent agenda is passed. Boards, committees, and commission reports, licenses. Molly?
No specific report, but it is the renewal season, so we will be seeing those coming through over the next few meetings.
Okay, thank you. Plan Commission, Alderman Grimmer is not here, so I refer you to the minutes.
Thanks,
I
Joe.
think-
Thank you.
You, Joe?
And our next
Right.
meeting is is it next week? Let's see, 23rd. Yes, next week, Wednesday. Lake Welfare Committee, Alderman Price is not here. I'll refer you to the minutes. I don't know that there was a meeting. Park and Recreation Commission, Tree Board.
Park and Rec had our annual spring park walk inspection on Saturday, focusing on maintenance and improvement opportunities at Cushing Park, Fireman's Park, Oakwood, and St. John's. And we have a list of items we're going to discuss at our upcoming meeting on Monday, the 28th.
Great, thank you. Public Works.
The Public Works Committee did not meet since our last March meeting due to a lack of items for the agenda. However, I would like to bring up an issue maybe for a future council meeting about Public Works support and volunteer support for the brush pile. We have 16 days that the brush pile is open, and typically about half of those are filled with Public Works employees at a cost to the city.
So just looking for a volunteer to check people in and have some coffee, read a
It's
book?
4 hours of standing there and watching your neighbors go by.
We'll see if we can get some on the website too, but yeah, reach out to everyone in the grocery store and at the library, and whoever you see. Thanks, Dirk. Del Art Commission, we're going to be reviewing our audit, I believe, at our next meeting. That's going to be in May. Police Commission, look, there was a meeting.
No meeting, no report.
All right. Library Board, Danielle.
Yes, we met. I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought. We did meet. We had we are going to be having the different directors from the library, not the directors, the different program directors at the library coming to meet with us every meeting so that we can, as a board, hear from the different departments and learn about what all is going on the inside of the library. So it's kind of fun to come to a meeting. If you want to come and learn about what's going on at the library, it's really fun. We also have the Culver's Night is next Tuesday, the 28th, from 4 to 7 in Wales. So come support the library.
Thank you. And I don't know if Stephanie told you, but I think it's our next meeting. Is our next meeting? We're doing a tour? It's one of the 2 meetings in May. So look at the agenda, look at your notices. I asked Stephanie to give the council a tour. So we're going to start out 45 minutes early and take a tour. And she said, if you don't have a library card, be ready to fill up an application. So I told her, she thought it was a good idea. Just out of budgets and other stuff, tell us what's going on in the library, show us firsthand. So there's a little show and tell before the next meeting, so. All right, Zoning Board of Appeals, nada?
No meeting, no report.
All right, Promotional and Tourism Commission.
Couple of items I wanted to mention. The Lapham Peak Lodge is going to be dedicated officially on May 17th, and I think it's 10 a.m. And if you haven't had a chance just to go past it, it's stunning. It's just so beautiful. I'm very excited about that. And also there are a couple new videos on our visitdelafield.org website. They're really cool. The tagline is Delafield, it's in our nature. And they're just so beautifully done. I like to post them up on my personal Facebook page and say, like, I live there, because it's that nice. Anyway, our new bike map is out to 2025, and a new visitor guide is coming soon. Our next meeting is May 17th, 7:30 a.m.
And I'll put in a plug, thank you. I'll put in a plug for the fact, I love it seems obscure sometimes, but the support for the trail fund that the Promotional and Tourism Commission does for the money the city continuously invests in putting it in and supporting it. connects you to that new facility at Lapham Peak. If you go down Cushing Road and go through Lapham Peak.
It does indeed.
So
and,
we are
yeah.
trying to connect everybody to everything in the city, so it takes you right to your hotel room. So, right? All right. Lake Country Fire and Rescue Commission, there's no report there. Lake Country Fire and Rescue Board, Alderperson Grimmer's not here, but I will say that it's Wednesday, right, Tom? Wednesday, the leadership meeting for the municipal leaders is happening. We're going to be meeting with the Wisconsin Policy Forum for the third or fourth time, maybe fifth time, to see what we all can lock arms with and say is a good idea going forward. So we'll see what happens. There's a couple new players, so looking forward to a constructive meeting there. Deer Management Committee?
The committee actually met for the first time since November, and we elected a new committee chair. That was the most significant accomplishment of the meeting.
And the deer are going to be dropping any time, not in a good way. New ones are coming.
Yes, they are.
Any minute. You can tell by the way they're acting. Okay. Which is maybe, it's happy news for some people, not me, but that's okay. All right, other committees, commissions, and boards, none. Unfinished business, none here. Mayor's report. I'll go quickly since we've had such a long meeting. April's a big month for new employees. A lot of reasons because it's a election month. But starting with anybody 10 years and over, we've got, let's see here. Rebecca Tennis, part-timer in the library, has been here 10 years. Jackie Valde has been here 11 years. Let's see here. Richard Akin, seasonal DPW employee, has been here 16 years. Timothy Eicher's been here 15 years. And let's see, we had Dirk in here mistakenly for 22. But then most notably, we've got Jerry Nernberger, who I think built the city. He's been here 35 years. So when you see Jerry, say,
He's one of my favorite
happy anniversary.
humans. Yeah, yeah.
All right, well, thanks for all your service, everyone, and many more years to come.
I do think I've been here 12, though. I started in 2013.
That's what it says. Oh, it's bad math. So 12. Add a year to everybody's.
It's an inclusive set.
Except for Dirk, has not been here for 22. All right. That's it for the mayor's report. New business, approval of vouchers payable from 3/18 to 4/22.
I move to approve the voucher list.
Second?
Any discussion, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, we're paying our bills. Report of city officials, city administrator, Tom.
Yeah, just real quickly, a reminder that coming up here pretty soon, May 12th to 16th is when we will have our spring brush collection. So the next couple of weekends, get out there and get your brush cutting taken care of and get that out, and we'll pick that up for you. And then if throughout the rest of the year, if you're looking to do brush drop-off or yard waste drop-off, we do have in the packet here the schedule of when those are. They're twice a month, and as Dirk said, we're still looking for some volunteers to fill the slots for those. So if you're interested, and if you use the service especially, consider maybe giving back and donating your time for one 4-hour time slot in the year, and it would be appreciated. And then lastly, we do have wood chips available now. They can be picked up for free, or they can be delivered at a negligible cost. It is $45 for a full truckload, which would be 6 yards, or $30 for a half truckload, which would be 3 yards. And then lastly, I was going to mention too the Wednesday meeting with LCFR and the Wisconsin Policy Forum, but Tim beat me to the punch on that one.
Well, then I'll add something that, as you all know, assessments updates went out. And so I'm sure some of us have gotten calls on it. Some people are alarmed, some people are proud. Either way, questions are easily answered. Go to our site, call staff, but you can go right to the city's assessor site. You can find it. Just come up with your questions, ask, you'll be satisfied.
And open book is occurring right now, so if you do want to talk to the assessor about your new assessed value, contact him. His phone number is on our website, and you can schedule an appointment to meet with him.
Yes, please. All right. Molly, city clerk report.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for covering the open book for me. The spring election is wrapped up, so I usually provide some statistics. Some notable items here. The turnout was very, very high for this election. It was way more than anybody was expecting. The other notable item is that the absentee was significantly increased over what we normally have for this type of election also. So I'm always watching the trends to make sure that we have the proper supplies, and just out of curiosity to see how that's going to go. So everything went well. We didn't have a line, so it was pretty smooth.
Thanks. Good. I like reports on voting like that. City treasurer's report is in the packet. Any council requests for future agenda items off the top of your head? If not, just reach out to staff anytime.
Is it just the obvious that we talked about, that we would visit the ordinance on the impact fee ordinance?
Very good. We'll get that on a future date soon. All right. Seeing no further business, meeting is now adjourned at 9:53. Thank you.